Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you watched the previous video where I did a EV6 Ioniq 5 comparison, you'll know that today's video topic is about the dealership markups. So as you know, I spent some time at the dealer checking out an EV6, and this was the only dealer locally that still had an EV6 on the lot, and I think that reason was because it was asking for a $10,000 dealer adjustment plus $1,400 in dealer add-ons. Now, the sales guy seemed pretty confident it would sell. He said they had had a couple of these EV6s and they all sold with the same markup, and this was the only one left. It seemed like they were just playing the waiting game, and it would only be a matter of time before someone would come in and buy it at that markup. Now, initially, I just thought, oh, well, that's a really interesting approach, because I had recently talked to Donna in sales over at Hyundai 112 in New York, where I had bought my Ioniq 5 at MSRP. Apparently, they have a wait list now, as a lot of people started calling them after seeing my video about how I bought it at MSRP at their dealership. Now, again, when I bought mine there 6-7 weeks ago, there were 3 limited trim cars just sitting on the lot. So clearly, word has spread quickly, and they're selling them super fast. Anyways, she mentioned to me that the more they sell, or the quicker they sell, the more they will get allocated to them. Meaning the faster they sell, the more they will get, and I believe that because about a week ago, I saw someone from their sales department post on Reddit. They put up a list of their incoming allocation, and at least for the East Coast, it's considered a huge allocation. I'm used to seeing 2 or 3 new Ioniq 5 allocations going to a dealer per month, but Hyundai 112 was supposed to get 20 Ioniq 5s in their next allocation. And of those 20, 11 of them were going to be limited trims, 7 of them were going to be SELs, and only 2 of them were going to be SEs. Again, to put that in context, when I first started searching for an Ioniq 5 in February, any dealer that had received that allocation of the Ioniq 5 probably had a few SEs, maybe 2 limiteds, maybe 2 SELs. And then after that, it was really more of a trickle where they would get 1 or 2 SEs, maybe 1 SEL, maybe 1 limited, maybe once a month. Now, I'm not sure what Hyundai 112's original allocation sizes looked like, but to get 20 cars and the majority of them being the most coveted trims is saying something. Clearly, selling at MSRP is working for them, and maybe these larger dealers with larger allocations can follow the same model because it's clearly a win-win for the dealer and the customer. Before we go any further, I just want to make sure you understand. I see a lot of emphasis placed on dealers gouging consumers with astronomical dealer adjustments. Tons of articles out there about dealers taking advantage of the market conditions, knowing that buyers like us are willing to pay above MSRP. And the overall theme is that dealerships are playing offense, going on the attack, and trying to take as much money as they can from us. Now, I don't doubt for a second that may be the case for some of these dealerships. But what about some of those dealers doing smaller adjustments because they're actually playing defense? What if they're doing it out of necessity instead of trying to exploit the consumer? So this video isn't an attempt to defend what dealerships are doing. Clearly, I went 6 hours round trip out of my way to make sure I was paying MSRP and not a penny more. So that should tell you enough about how I feel about paying over MSRP. But throughout this process, I think I completely failed to recognize the human aspect of working at a dealership through the pandemic and now through the chip shortage. So hopefully, here's a glimpse of what I've come to realize recently. There's a tricky part, and I think this happens to the smaller dealers or the ones getting smaller allocations. What if you're only getting 2 or 3 of these super desirable cars per month? That brings me to my dealership experience with the sales guy who showed me the EV6. He told me that in the current market, he only sells about 8 or 9 cars a month. Not just EV6, but all the car models combined at the dealership, he's selling about 8 or 9 a month, which is down from pre-pandemic, pre-chip shortage market when he was selling about 16 to 18 cars a month. So that means he's selling about half as many cars. Now, I don't know his pay structure, but many dealers have the same base pay plus commission setup, or something along those lines. So if he's selling half as many cars, he's probably taking home close to half pay in the current market. then if you think about it from the perspective of the dealership owner, even if it's a good owner or a nice owner and he wants to help out his employees and pay that difference out of his own pocket, how long can he afford to do that if his dealership is selling half as many cars at the same profit margin? As a business, that's just not a sustainable business model. And it's been like this for maybe 2 years with no end in sight. So from that perspective, I understand why a smaller dealer or one with small allocations might mark up their car. By marking up their cars, they can sell half as many cars but still make the same amount of money as pre-pandemic and pre-chip shortage market. Alright, so let's get to the spreadsheet. If you've seen my videos before, you know that I often use these as it's just a good way for me to present my thoughts. Now, please remember that all of these numbers are made up. None of it is hard fact or data, as I have no idea about the true profit margins or the true sales numbers. But if we go by what the sales guy told me, then in general, many dealerships may be selling at half the volume of what they were selling pre-chip shortage. Now, if you go with that, then you can use this made-up profit margin, and then we can create this example scenario where a small dealer markup is not necessarily a move made out of greed, but rather a move made to keep the dealership operating per usual. So let's look at that first example. Let's pretend it's before the chip shortage, where a make-believe dealership is selling a make-believe car called the Ioniq X. Let's say they're selling it for $40,000, which is the made-up MSRP, and let's say when they sell it at $40,000, they make $1,000 in profit. Now we're also going to say that they're selling 60 of these cars a month, with the monthly profit coming out to $60,000. Then we move down to the second example. Let's say the chip shortage suddenly hits, and now they only get 30 cars a month from the manufacturer. Let's say they sell all 30, but they're still selling at MSRP, which means they still get the $1,000 profit off each sale. Now they're only making $30,000. And this is where the human side should kick in. If a dealership is making half as much money as they were before, what happens to that dealership? What happens to the staff? What happens to the sales team? Is everyone going to take a half pay cut? How does that affect their families? How does that affect everyone that they have to take care of? So, let's say this make-pretend dealer decides, well, I want to keep everyone operating and living at the same level as they were before. He can choose to pay them out of his own pocket, but how long can that last? Here's another sample scenario. We'll move to number 3, which is, here you see the dealer adds a $1,000 dealer adjustment to each sale of these Ioniq X's. So you see that they're still selling only 30 cars a month, but now with that dealer adjustment, they're getting back to $60,000 a month in profit. Now, personally, I find this very interesting because it had never crossed my mind. Originally, I had thought markup is just the dealer trying to make as much money as they can, trying to take advantage of the current market conditions. And for some dealerships, that may be the case, but maybe, just maybe, for some of those smaller dealerships getting small allocations, maybe this is their way of staying afloat and making the same that they were pre-chip shortage level. So let's move on to the last example. In this example, the dealer is adding $4,000 as a markup to the same 30 cars. And in this scenario, you can see that their monthly profit jumps quite a bit. So clearly they're making way more than they were pre-chip shortage. Now again, these are all made up numbers. I have no idea what their actual profit margins are based on whatever their dealer adjustment is. But I will say that the sales guy that I was talking to said that they had 3 Hyundai Palisades come through, and all 3 of them sold for $15,000 above MSRP. And they sold them no problem. So I'm not here trying to say that dealer adjustments are good or bad. What I'm trying to do is hopefully shed some more light on the full picture. Clearly at a certain number, a dealership starts profiting way more than they were pre-chip shortage. But what about below that number? What if they're just trying to get back to the same profit that they were pre-chip shortage? So those are just my 2 cents on the whole markup situation. Talking with the sales guy really helped me understand a little bit more from his perspective. And it wasn't like he was trying to make me understand his side of it. We were just talking like you normally would during a test drive. But when we got on the topic of incoming inventory or allocations, he made it very clear that they just weren't getting as many cars as they used to, and that they knew they were able to charge more for certain cars. Clearly, he had no issue telling me that their Palisades itself were $15,000 over MSRP.